In Ebro Delta, Ian, a teenager with the ability to project visual illusions into the minds of others, lives with his father, Vicente, running low-level scams. One day, Vicente enters a local shop to steal some drinks, while Ian stands at the window using his power. Vicente leaves the shop paying only for gum, and the scam is nearly pulled off, but Ian gets distracted when a girl who was passing by calls him a freak. The shopkeeper immediately noticed the missing bottles and went outside to find Vicente holding a hammer in her hand. She finds Vicente's car but locks the door. When she was about to break the glasses, Ian showed up and used his powers on her. It was only after they escaped that the shopkeeper was awakened by the police. She saw herself being shot, but it was all an illusion. They start getting pursued by the police, and Vicente drives as fast as he can. At the same time, Ian, who is frustrated by these low-level scams, argues with his father about pulling off a larger heist and getting rich. But his father tells him that they will get caught quickly. When Ian keeps insisting on it, Vicente tells him that if he gets caught, the government will take him to their laboratory and run tests on him. After hearing this, Ian gets rid of the police car by projecting an illusion of snow falling on the car, which causes the officer inside to think he lost control and that his car has flipped. Ian and his father thought they got away clean, but a woman named Adriana, who works for an anonymous organization, is seen looking at camera footage of the shop and the police car at the gas station. She is relieved after finally being able to find him. While sleeping in an abandoned old ship where he and his father live, Ian has a nightmare about his mother, who seems to possess some ability he does. He wakes up to find his father cooking for his birthday, which they celebrate using some scrambled eggs. Vicente tells him that he will get a job as a mechanic while Ian goes to school to complete his degree in biology. Then he tells him that he doesn't want to lose him like his mother. After hearing his father's sentimental speech, Ian tells his father that he has a plan and he intends to go someplace, but his father tells him it is a bad idea. Ian gets frustrated since he has not been able to do anything normal since he got his abilities. Ian stays inside and practices his hand-to-hand combat wooden skills on a piece of wood prepared by his father. Meanwhile, at one of the local bars in town, the police officer, whom Ian tricked with heavy snow illusions, talks to the bartender about the hailstorms he endured. At the bar, another customer, who kept overhearing this conversation, the man uses some kind of power and causes the police officer to bang himself on the counter and fall. That night, a group of armed men are seen approaching the old ship. Vincent, who was watching TV, thought it was Ian, who was not home at the time, and asked to join him for the move. Then one of the armed people put a gun to his head while Adria appeared in front of him. Adriana knows Vincent from a past life, and she tells him that the agency found him because of the incident with the policeman. Adriana's agency looks for people with powers like Ian, and they call them perceptors. Excluding Ian, there is one of the left, and he was present at the bar. Then she asks him where Ian is, but Vincent vows never to tell her. One of the men tells Adriana that they have tracked the car to an arcade game zone where the Perceptor has arrived. But before he can get to Ian, he sees Adriana's men and hides behind a wall. Then, he beats up the man and knocks him out. He uses the man's radio to spread false information and divert their attention. The Perceptor manipulates another man from the agency who starts shooting, thinking he saw his target. The man is ordered to follow the target, while the Perceptor keeps walking behind him. Ian, who was hiding under a table, was shocked to see someone like him. Another agency man appears out of nowhere and puts some kind of device that covers all of his head. Ian is immediately taken away while the Perceptor fights his new captor, who is trying to put handcuffs on him. Although he can't see because of the device masking his head, the Perceptor fights everyone using his supreme combat skills. Outside, Ian meets Adrian in a truck but doesn't see his father, who is sitting unconscious. Adrian tells Ian to come with her if wants to stay alive, and after some hesitation, he gets into the truck. When he sees his father, he begins to freak out, so they restrain him and put the masking device on his head. At the same time, the Perceptor successfully beats everyone and manages to get the masking device off his head. But by the time he goes outside, the track has begun moving. Adriana forcefully takes a blood sample from Ian's neck and processes it on her computer. She calls her superiors and informs them about having the kid. Then, the preceptor begins to manipulate another truck driver who swerves in an effort not to hit a baby in a stroller. The cars from behind began crashing back, and chaos ensued. Knowing it was all an illusion, Adriana tells the truck driver, who thinks the road is blocked, to carry on, and they escape him for the time being. Next, the truck arrives at the facility of the agency, and Ian is restrained with the mask still on his head. Adriana orders to free him, and they remove everything. She apologizes for his treatment and tells him she had to do it for the safety of her team. But Ian doesn't take it kindly and asks for an explanation. She begins to show a video showing violence around the world and tells him that power governs the world today and can't be bought with money or technology. Real power, in her definition, was the ability to create a lie and remain invisible. Then Adriana tells him that they are at war against the Awareness, an organization of people with abilities like him, who have been controlling the world by manipulating leaders, politicians, and the military. She tells him she aims to preserve the little democracy left in the world. Ian asks the identity of the man he saw at the arcade game zone, and she tells him he is the Preceptor, the last one remaining from the Awareness and the most powerful one the agency has ever faced. She tells that the Preceptor wants him to join his cause, and if he refuses, he will kill him. Adriana wants Ian to work with her. She also wants to find the key to his powers using the blood samples she took. Ian demands to see his father, but Adriana asks him for a demonstration first. She encourages him to use his emotions and project something he has never done before. Then she tries to get into his head, telling him about his father, costing him friendship, school, and his mother. Adriana manages to unlock his potential, and he projects a beach around her with a drink in her hands, and she asks him to show another projection, more difficult than the one he is showing her. But Ian removes all the projection and refuses to continue until his demand of seeing his father is met. Ian is taken to another room, and he meets his father. But Adriana asks him to look into his father's memory, which confuses Ian because he hasn't done anything like this. Adriana tells him that this is his secondary power. Vincent tells his son not to be manipulated by Adriana, but Ian gets curious when Adriana shows him the picture of his mother. Vincent begs Ian not to do it, but Ian looks into his father's memory, where he sees his father stealing him from the agency while Adriana is present. When Ian gets out of his father's memory, he returns full of questions, while Vincent is left unconscious. Adriana talks to her superior, who pressures her to extract the formula out of Ian's blood. She tells him that Ian's source of power might be genetic. This makes Ian the first natural-born Preceptor. His superior, who is not interested in Ian's power, orders her to get rid of him before he becomes a liability. She argues against it and tells her superior that Ian might be the only defense against the Mule, a feared enemy of the agency. A scientist is seen arriving at the agency, and he plans to do some dangerous test on Ian's brain, despite the protest made by another colleague who went to report his actions. Meanwhile, Esther, one of the women who works for Adriana, goes to Ian's room and offers to get him out. She fights the guards using her baton and incapacitates them. Esther tells Ian to leave Vincent after discovering that he is not his real father, but Ian convinces her to get Vincent, stating that all the answers are in his head. At the same time, Adriana discovers Ian's disappearance and orders to sound the alarm and seal the facility. Ian, Esther, and Vincent get into one of the cars and drive away at a high speed. In the agency's facility, the mad scientist is discovered to be the Preceptor. He leaves the premises after seeing the car containing Ian and his group. Ian was almost stopped at the gate, but he escaped using his powers on the armed men. They escaped the compound, but one of the tires was damaged by a spike. Ian, Esther, and Vincent couldn't go far because of the tire, and Ian ended up losing control. The car rolls over repeatedly and crashes into the woods, where the Preceptor arrives with another car. Ian uses all of his strength and manages to deceive the Preceptor by projecting an empty forest onto him. Sometime in the night, Ian helps Vincent, who is injured. In the morning, Ian and Esther have a conversation on the motel's rooftop. Ian is still processing the fact that Vicente is not his father and feels lied to by the whole world, but Esther tells him to believe in himself. They go inside the motel room and discuss Vicente. After being hesitant initially, Ian agrees to go inside Vicente's memory. Inside Vicente's head, Ian sees Vicente, a former member of the agency, speaking with Adriana, who goes out and speaks with someone who was tortured. Ian pulls out after seeing the unknown person's finger bleeding. Ian goes to the bank and withdraws 5,000 euros in small bills by manipulating the lady giving customer service. Ian and Esther escape the police and arrive at the motel, but the Perceptor has tracked them down. Ian tries to project a room under construction, but the Perceptor doesn't fall for it. The Perceptor tries to calm Ian to talk with him, but Ian is not willing to listen, so after repeatedly fighting because of Ian's stubbornness, the Perceptor entered Ian's thoughts, extracted the address in Warsaw, and left. After the Perceptor leaves, Ian wakes up and confronts Vicente, blaming him for lying to him all those years and hurting his feelings, saying he is not his father. Vicente tells him that he did everything for his good, but Ian is too angry to listen. Vicente begs him not to go to Warsaw, stating it will only bring pain and suffering, but Ian decides to go and he parts away with Vincent. Back at the agency, Adriana and her American superior discuss Ian being seen at the back. Then one of the agency's men reports to Adriana that Ian has brought train tickets to Warsaw. Ian arrives at the address with Esther and they break into the abandoned place. They go upstairs and find the room where Ian saw his mother playing with his childhood self. He recognized it immediately and broke the wall because he saw the room bigger in the memories. Behind the wall were a lot of files. Esther and Ian found the files describing the experiments made on his mother. He finds his mother's journal and discovers his mother's name, Ursula Kaminsky, daughter of the creator of the formula. Vicente goes back to the old ship and reminisces about Ian. While he was drinking, Andrea showed up and told him she found Ian. Vincent tells her to leave him alone and let him find his way, but Adriana counters this, saying Ian is alone and can easily be manipulated. The Perceptor arrives at the Warsaw house and Esther is seen standing with him. She tells him to listen to what the Perceptor has to say, but Ian doesn't trust him, pointing a gun from multiple directions, but with the help of Esther, the Perceptor identifies the real Ian and points a gun at him. Then the Perceptor puts his gun down and tells him that he is his father. They took a seat and the Perceptor began telling his side of the story. Kaminsky, the agency scientist who created the formula, injected it into a group of volunteers, including the Perceptor and Ian's mother. After the Cold War, the agency didn't have a purpose for them and feared they might regroup and work for their enemies, so decided to exterminate them. This operation was called disinfection. The Perceptors were hunted one by one, killed, but there was one special Perceptor called the Mule, the last and strongest Perceptor who was the perfect weapon because he developed a third power, the ability to bend people to his will and make them do anything they want. After escaping the attempt on his life, the Mule regrouped the survivor Perceptors and created the awareness. He gave the remaining survivors guidelines that helped them to go unnoticed without using the power. The Perceptors and the Mule were made sterile by the agency, which made Ian the miracle. While the Perceptor is in the middle of telling this story, he notices that the agency's men have found the address and alerts Ian and Esther. The Perceptor tells Ian to escape through the roof while he covers them. As Esther and Ian escape, the Perceptor fights with the agency men. The Perceptor displays his shooting ability and uses his ability to project spiders on the men, causing them to be distracted and making them easy targets. Esther and Ian are also faced with the agency men and she disables them. But in the end, although Ian and Esther made it to the roof, the Perceptor was captured using the masking device. Esther acrobatically jumps from the roof, while Ian goes through a plastic bag and they both escape. The Perceptor is brought to the agency's facility and monitored carefully. No one was allowed to enter his room, and they extracted his blood using a robot. Adriana was responsible for the trap in Warsaw. She waited until the Perceptor appeared in a strategy she designed to catch both Ian and the Perceptor. Adriana tells him she will test the blood and find out if he is the Mule or not. And then she plans to torture him to compel him to tell her where Ian is. She plans to get the formula out of him and take away his power unless he cooperates. She gives the order to torture him, and the Preceptor begins shaking as if some shocking waves were applied to his brains. Adriana gets carried away, and her superior is forced to stop her before she kills him and renders him useless. Later, Adriana receives bad news about the formula. She tells her superior the bad news and that the formula died with Komenisi, making Ian the only source left. Meanwhile, the Preceptor asks for water, and a robot drills at his mouth, and he drinks using a straw. Then the Preceptor uses the opening of his mouth to use the third power. He forces one of the scientists, who has his hand on the joystick, to turn the robot, which has a heavy machine gun installed on it, towards them and fires it. After killing everyone in the room except the man with the joystick, he triggers the release of the restraints with the joystick. He takes off the masking device and walks out of there. In Madrid, Ian and Esther arrive at the Preceptor's house, and Ian meets his mother. Ian approaches his mother and talks to her, but she can't respond to him. So Ian uses his power and accesses her memories. In the memories, Ian sees the same things he saw before. His mom playing with his childhood self, but this time he can walk up to her. Ursula begins to have some reaction, and the memories change. Ian sees his mother on a chair being tortured while she is sitting on a chair attached to a machine. The Preceptor enters the memory and tells him the agency is responsible for the torture she endured to extract the formula. The Preceptor tells Ian that his mother destroyed the original and encrypted the original formula in Ian's memories. Ian understands that his mother wanted only her son to access the formula, and the Preceptor has been after it the whole time. The formula was the chemical blocks that appeared in the form of toys Ian's younger self played with. The Preceptor tries to break into the memory, but he can't. Everyone is back to reality, and Ian tearfully sinks to his mother. At the same time, Adriana and countless of the agency men have arrived at the home, armed to the teeth. They enter the room to find the Preceptor, Ian, and his mother. Enraged by the torture his mother received, Ian activates his third power. He becomes possessed and causes the men to shoot each other. Ian goes to the next room and continues to his third power. He kills everybody and goes outside where Adrina and her men stand. Everyone holding a gun, including Adrina, who was trying to calm Ian down, was shaking. Then Ian forces everyone to be on their knees with their gun pointing to their neck. The Preceptor tells Ian to use his power and kill Adriana, who was pointing a gun at her head. She tells him that his mother died years ago and the Preceptor was manipulating everything so that he could use the formula for himself. But Ian doesn't listen and manipulates Adriana to point her in her mouth. Vincent appeared and asked Ian to reconsider. Ian tells him that the Preceptor is manipulating him like a puppet and not to fall for the trap. The Preceptor suggests Vincent suffer his fate similar to the others and throws his gun on the floor. When Vicente talks about being a real father, the Preceptor uses his power and makes him shoot himself. Ian lets everybody go and runs to the dying Vicente, who tells him to look into his memories. While Vicente was working at the agency, Ursula was the one who asked him to take her son away to protect Ian. And that was the reason Vicente took him away. It was to save his life. Filled with regret, Ian apologizes and calls him his father. Upon realizing the truth, Ian takes the gun Vicente shot himself with and goes after the Preceptor, who has gone away after kidnapping Esther. Ian arrives at an event where multiple guests are seen enjoying themselves. When he hears Esther calling out his name, he uses his power to make the guests unconscious, making them all fall to the ground. Ian comes face to face with the Preceptor, who is holding Esther at gunpoint. Ian removes the guests by rolling them around. Then he tries to manipulate the Preceptor into moving the gun away from Esther, but he fails. The Preceptor begins to manipulate the guest into fighting Ian, who tries his best not to hurt the civilians. He uses multiple civilians to fight Ian and knocks him to the ground. Ian was holding back a lot, and this was causing him to be beat up repeatedly. Then he took charge and put down most of them, but the Preceptor used a very large man to start beating Ian. The man lifts Ian with only one hand and almost strangles him, but Adrena shoots and kills the man. Ian gets up and points the gun at the Preceptor, who admits that he approached Ian looking for the formulas only and never cared about him. The Preceptor offers to look inside Ian's mind and take the formula in exchange for releasing Esther. Adriana approaches Ian and tells him that he is seeing a projection the preceptor has put into his head. Ian goes back through all his memories, contemplating the idea that Esther may not have been real all this time, but in the end, Ian takes the shot and kills the preceptor. After the fight, Ian and Esther visit the grave of Ursula and pay their respects. Adriana, who was also present at the time, asks Ian to help her find the formula and fight the war, but he refuses, choosing to stay neutral. Before Adriana gets in her car, Ian creates a projection of her superior and kills her after finding out her intention to kill him if he doesn't cooperate. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.